I've gotten rusty in my abstinence. Yes, Dexter. Yes, you have. Hello, everyone. Terrence here with Hollywood Already Did It. If you haven't already, go ahead, like, share, subscribe to the channel, ring that bell below. Anytime we have something, you will be among the first to know. Be sure to fire off in the comments below. Let me know what you're thinking about Dexter New Blood so far. So, episode 3 is called Smoke Signals, and a couple of things that I thought are starting to come to fruition. One of them being that tech was sort of going to be the thing that does Dexter in. He's just not aware of what he's not aware of. He's built in an era where things were not as technologically advanced, and it almost does him in. So what we get in this episode is Dexter Jim begins the show with a little bit of a monologue saying, "I love the wildlife. I love this open air. I need these people to get off my damn land." He needs to find a way to get this team of people that are searching and doing their search stuff off of his land. So one, he can actually move the body. He finds it somewhat ironic and weird that these people are looking for something when it's directly under their feet. And so what we come to find out, Tech does Dexter in. There is a wildlife camera that exists in the wildlife, which I always kind of wondered in this big open world, there may be a drone or someone seeing because there's so many blind spots in this. But yes, tech is what does them in, and there's a camera that has caught apparently some footage of the night and the questioning of the killing of the white buck. So the team is heading to the station to go look at that video while Dexter has to run off and take Harrison to school because it is his first day of school and he needs to meet the principal, can't be late. And that's sort of how we split both Jim and Dexter for the majority of this episode. They come back a couple of times, but they're basically doing their own thing, and we get to learn a lot more, a lot more about Harrison as this goes along. Well, before they split, Dexter meets with the principal and kind of has an overview of Harrison. And Harrison, they're going over Harrison's school records and his schools, how he had like a 3.8, went for like a 1.8, and then a 3.0 again, like it was a dip. And he says it's because of his stepmom. Dexter's left in the dark. He has no idea. He didn't even know about the grades. And the principal sort of chastises him, like, know more about your son. But it's clear that living in Argentina, he knows Spanish. He's affluent. He's highly educated. His IQ is really high. So much so that he has to take a placement test. He takes the placement test, scores through the roof. The principal calls Dexter back a little later and tells him that he's probably cheated because there was a moment when the teacher left the room and he probably used his cell phone. And Dexter didn't really back him up. He did the little shitty thing where he's like, "Well, did you use the phone? Like, we'll just take it again." Not really giving him the benefit of the doubt, and he takes it again and scores even higher. So Dexter has a little bit of egg on his face, but what we learn in all of this is that Harrison is a genius, which may be a detriment to everyone. When I'll talk about what happens later. After that, Dexter heads back to kind of make sure he's still keeping his foot in the investigation, keeping his awareness of what's happening. He gets back, and there's a CSI investigation person who is a bit, what appears to be aloof. He keeps dropping the cases. He doesn't seem like he's as put together as Dexter was back in the day. But Dexter wants to tag along, but also Matt's dad, Kurt, wants to tag along as well, according to see how everything is going because they get to the investigation place. They tell him that he has to stand outside. They have to stand outside, and the team sort of does this thing. And as much of a goof as he appears to be, he's damn good at his job. He does the saying that Dexter used to think all the time: they complete each other's sentence, that blood is the truth. He finds blood that looks like it's been coagulated and mixed, which comes to find out he thinks this is human blood mixed with animal blood to sort of throw us off our case. Dexter's like, "Damn it, this guy's good." And Angela asks him to sort of recreate or think about what could have happened, and he basically lays it out exactly as it did. Even so much to the point where Matt's head hit the rocks. The rock isn't there, but there's an indentation of where the rock was. And so Dexter's like, "Well, shit. Damn it." But luckily, the wildlife cameras, while there, only give heat signatures. They're not actual visual images. There's nothing that they can expand. And they give blind spots, so you can't quite see everything. So Dexter's not completely effed, but he needs to do some work to kind of clean this up. And so once he hears what happens and he kind of sees the cameras, although I don't even think he really sees them all. This is where it gets a little dicey. He's like, I feel like you can still get caught. You don't know where every camera is, but he thinks it's just triangulated on one spot. But he goes back, digs up the body of Matt, and takes the vest that was wearing, and then like just rubs it all around the crime scene to sort of give the dogs that are being called in because they found this new evidence. Like they're going hard. Angela's calling everybody in just to throw them all off their senses, so he can have time to do what he needs to do to move the body, while the dogs are kind of doing their own thing. So he spends an entire night doing all of that, super exhausted, super tired. He comes back after an entire night of doing that, and Harrison is there with cereal. Like I fed it for myself, but then asked to be dropped off to school. And he had already taken his jacket off, already had taken his coat off, and just like, well, hell. Before that happens, let's talk about Harrison's first day at school. He's familiar with the cool kids, so with Zach and all of them, and he goes over to their locker where they are catfishing a kid named Ethan, sending him new photos and talking about like, oh, send me your photos, you stud boy, and they show him photos of like some drawings that he's done. Because the kid's really highly talented, and Harrison looks up and sees him and kind of is like, well, that's fucked up. They believe or laughing and saying, yeah, he is fucked up. But it is read and it is believed that he thinks that what they're doing is fucked up and it is not fair the way that they're treating Ethan. So then the follow-up day, after the long night for Dexter, he drops Harrison back off at school for day 2. And as he enters the school, Deb shows up in an image and kind of gives a really fun montage of like what to do with the body, because Dexter's just he's at his wit's end. He has no idea how to remove the body in enough time before someone kind of closes in on him. And there's this wood chipper sequence that is just hilarious. You can tell that Carpenter's having fun because she eats that scene up. But Dexter has an idea to be like, all right, well, none of this stuff works. Let me look at local mines. But before that, he does have to go do an interrogation. So Logan tells Dexter to come on in. They're just having an interview with everybody that has been around Matt within the last 48 hours before he's gone missing. And Logan has been up on his P's and Q's. He knows what he's talking about. He's like, I know you went to Matt's party, and I know all of this and that. But it has been seen that you've been in the woods a lot hunting. And Dexter's like, no, I've been hiking. And Logan's like, with a gun. So it is aware that people know that his routine of doing the same thing every day has been always there. But he seems very interrogative. He's just doing his job. He gives them these inquisitive looks, but I don't think he knows or is on to anything. But it just does seem a little odd, some of the things that Jim is saying based on that. But he gets out of there and he gets to play it off fine. He goes to work, and then eventually, after looking at a map for a while, he sort of triangulated a place to finally drop off the remains of Matt. He is allowed to leave work early to go help out with the search, but instead he's going off on his own to sort of locate a location to dispose of Matt's remains. While that's happening, Harrison is in school and he has a moment at the lunch table. You know, the new kid, if you get a chance typically to sit with the cool kids, you usually do. Audrey sees him. She's like, hey, Harrison, and he's about to sit with them because, he's at least cool with her. But she's at the table with Zach and all those folks, and Ethan's at a table by himself. And he just goes over to sit next to Ethan and sits there and chills. And lets him know immediately that, Zach's catfishing you. She's not real. And he's like, who the hell are you? He's like, I'm Harrison, and I'm just somebody who's sick of people at the top of who are cool, or these cool kids feel like they're the top of the food chain when they're not. Harrison delivers and says a lot of things in this that leads me to believe what I said last episode is that, Harrison might got some bodies. Like, Harrison might be a killer. I feel like there's a chance his stepmom, I don't think she died of pancreatic cancer. I feel like Hannah might have died because he finally got on to the fact that Dexter was alive. But we'll get there. There is a moment in this episode where after the lunch, Ethan's at a locker typing back, and Harrison starts egging him on to like, hey, send this to him. Send this to Zach. And he sends a photo to Zach. He's like, hey, do you want me to send you this photo? He's like, yeah. They're like, yes, please. And they're thinking he's gonna send him like a naked photo of him, probably, or some weird stuff that Ethan may have sent him before. And what he sends is a GIF that has imposed Zach, and he's banging a goat or an elf or some farm animal that he shouldn't be. And he gets furious, and Zach just beelines it over to Ethan. He's like, "What the hell are you doing?" And Harrison Vulcan neck just grabs him by the neck and basically incapacitates him. Like he can't move. He's freaking out and he's scared. And Harrison threatens the crap out of him. He's like, "You're gonna leave Ethan alone. If I ever see you doing this again, I will end you." Pretty dark and scary turn that he has. And then after he throws him away, another friend comes up and he's like, "What do you want to do?" And nothing comes of it. They're all kind of frightened of him. And he leaves them with a note saying, "Oh, by the way, I made the wrestling team, so I'll see you guys on the mat." I don't know if Harrison has been picked on before. He seems like he says to be, like Dexter said, to be um, not socially awkward like Dexter was, but I think it might be because of his menacing tone that he has sort of leveled the playing field. Like there is no haves and have-nots in his world. Um, but Audrey, Angela's daughter, sees this and kind of is like, "Hey, you want to go take a ride with me? Let's go." And they drive off together. These sequences are sort of parallel to each other. Dexter finds a mine that he thinks would be a good spot to dispose of the body. It seems he throws a rock down. It seems to be deep enough to kind of like dispose of the remains. But then a bear shows up, and he runs out of there. So there goes that idea. Because I don't think he can safely get back in there to actually dispose of those in that time. Well, that's happening. Harrison and Audrey are on their way, and they're just having a little fun ride. They stop by the butcher after having some heart to heart with each other about their lives and her genealogy and her dad, and get a little bit into some more of the darkness of Harrison on that car ride. They get to the butcher to get some meat for Angela's dinner, and the butcher informs them that he's holding the white buck, which Audrey is of that world, of that land, and knows how much that buck means, and knows that it's very disheartening and unfortunate the way that they are treating that animal. So they sort of devise a plan to have that buck put back, and so we don't quite see it. But they take a ride up to the reservation and sort of have a talk to see if they can do that. While going up there, the car stalls. And so Audrey is a tomboy-ish, but she's a mechanic. She knows how to do her stuff because Angela's like, "I never want you to be out there alone." It seems like that's more so of a setup because of the way that this happened to Angela's friend, who was a reservation Iris, I believe was her name. But she's always keeping Audrey up on the up and up, so she knows how to change all this. So she sends Harrison off to the auto parts store, just a little while ways down the road to grab that while she fixes things. While she's doing that, Edward Olsen pulls up beside her, and this is the first time you sort of become uncomfortable for her, because in this we still aren't sure. At least I'm still not sure if Edward or Kurt. It's one of the two of them. If Edward or Kurt is the person who we're getting in these intercut scenes that are holding captive these young girls, which we will talk about that shortly. And so it becomes very unnerving because Harrison's not there yet, and he offers her to sit in her car to get warmed up, and it just feels like, oh, everything he's doing is trying to groom her so that he can kind of put her to sleep. Luckily, she is smart enough. She's like, "I know who you are. I don't want to be around you. I don't want to have anything to do with you. Please go." And then Harrison looks to be pretty close to it, enough that there's not enough time for him to do what he needs to do. But he does kind of say, "I see you around and be safe out there." Kind of in a menacing, threatening way, which just makes me feel a little uncomfortable. Feels a little too on the nose that they're going to directly point to that person, but who knows? I think they're trying to put both of them on the board to kind of make it so that we are unsure of which way this goes. Kudos to them. But while Dexter is trying to recover after the bear scare, he is told that like he has to have dinner with Angela because Harrison and Audrey are having dinner with her, and she's like she offers Dexter. And Dexter really like no, and he's just like shit. because the plan has already been set. They go to have dinner. It's going well. He appreciates and likes the fact that there's actually a family having a family moment. He wishes he had that with Harrison. While there, it is relayed to Dexter that, hey, we're going to be taking this buck up to the reservation so they can properly dispose of the body. And they've sort of volunteered his truck bed so that he can do so. Dexter's not happy because of all of this. He is also tired. He has not slept because of the whole night of moving the vest around the entire thing and going right to taking. He's become sort of tired and delirious, and it's becoming harder for him to think of what to do next. They then take the buck up there, and the reservation folks sort of take over and handle their ceremony in the way to properly dispose of the white buck. Jim / Dexter and Harrison get in the car and say, like, we should probably leave. We don't need to be here. And they have a sort of a heart-to-heart moment. Dexter says, I failed. I should have backed you up. I should have been with you. And Harrison's like, yeah, you should have. And Dexter at that point says, from this point on, I will. And Harrison says, thanks, Dad. And the way that look and the way that the sound of the overlay of voice comes over, that means a lot to him. It's a feeling that he probably didn't know he wanted to have, but he got it. I do want to make a point to mention that there's a scene where after Harrison saves Ethan, where Ethan FaceTimes Harrison and sort of says thank you. And Harrison said, no problem. Like, people like that, or they just, because they're tough and they think they're cool, they try to pick on others. And Harrison's like, that's not going to happen, not while I'm here. And then Ethan commits to say, hey, can I show you some of my art? Because I've always thought about causing them harm, and I just never did it. And he shows him a bunch of images of, like, him punching a hole through Zach and having a hole in his heart, or, like, coming to a school, like, with a Punisher and guns and whatnot. Very macabre. And Harrison doesn't bat an eye. In fact, he kind of smiles and kind of like, It's the second time that we've seen in so many episodes where he has not flinched at violence and had been okay with it. In fact, sort of championed it. And the line that he says is, they know nothing about real violence, is really telling. I think everybody who's commented on last week's episode that says, yo, Harrison got bodies, I think it's evident to say now that Harrison got probably a bunch of them. He's probably in better practice than Dexter is in the last few years. While at the reservation, right before they're about to leave, the way that they dispose of the white buck is by setting it on fire and having the ashes go up into the air. And that sort of gives Dexter the aha moment to be like, wait a minute, we have a smokestack place here. I'm going to dispose of the body there. And that is where that whole rigmarole of where to dispose of the body finally comes to an end. He puts it in there and closes it up, and for that, Matt is gone, the body is gone. He can go back to being the dad with Harrison and live, and hopefully no cameras caught him. What we then get, though, is that as he's driving back home, he sees Kurt, drunk as a skunk, outside of the store, not seeming to be in mourning mode, but seeming to be in celebration mode. And it's confusing to Dexter because he's like, that doesn't look like somebody is mourning. Come to find out, he believes that he has just had a conversation via FaceTime, not even just phone conversation, with his son Matt, which Dexter says that's unbelievable because, well, it is. And I am not sure what type of drug or what type of high or what type of thing that he is on. Maybe he did, and maybe all of this is a lie. Who knows? But Dexter decides to give him a ride to his house, and that's sort of how they ride off as this episode ends, because Dexter just wants to get a little bit more information about why he believes that's to be the case. I think, unfortunately, because that was such a clean way to end the match stuff, I think what's going to happen is that he gets to his house, he drops him off, and does a little investigation, and sees that he is, in fact, the person who is hunting these girls. I say hunting because there's a whole side sequence here where the person who is keeping these girls captive, we still don't get to see his face, we can see his eyes a little bit, which looks a lot like Kurt, but it could just be any older white dude. He puts a ski mask on, and he sort of starts some classical music, and he opens the doors to the room so that they can escape, so that they can sort of leave. And all this time, what we've been seeing is that he's been feeding them, getting them bathed to sort of prep them to allow them to be at their best situation, so that when you freeze them, they run. He can hunt them. He gets off. He seems to get off on that moment. So he has a red scope, and when they get a certain distance, he pops them, and then it looks like he drains their blood. It just seems all a bit excessive. There's a whole detail-oriented way that he's doing this that I think once Dexter gets wind of whomever this is, that Dark Passenger is coming back, and he's coming back times 10. And then you get into that weird thing where it's interesting because Matt was a prick, and yes, what he did before was bad, but not enough that really Dexter in the moment. He didn't kill him because of that. He killed him because of anger for killing the white buck and all the stuff that was pent up, and he's been holding on to that. It wasn't as clean of a way like Dexter usually does all of his research and then kills. He didn't have that. This one, he's going to have, it seems like, have a lot of stuff to like, oh, I got to bring out the passenger one more time. This guy, whoever he is, got to go. And it's still 50-50 on whether it's Edward or Kurt, but it's one of them old folks. Sprinkled in here, just the introduction of a new character. I just mentioned it because it doesn't really matter that much to this episode, but Molly Park comes in. She's a podcaster, Instagram influencer. Another way that, however this goes, tech somehow is going to find a way to sort of venture in here and muck up the whole system. But what we learn via that is that also that Audrey, Angela's daughter, is into true crime podcasts and true crime, and so Harrison's probably going to start feeling comfortable enough to talk to her about some of the crimes that he may or may not have committed. He definitely committed when he was before he got to this small town. This is a really fun episode because I think Dexter is at his best, and anyone who's been a fan of this is Dexter is at his best when it looks like he's close to getting caught, and seeing him how the brain has to work to get out of that situation before it compounds into something else. It looks like the chapter or that part of the mat of it all is kind of clean for him, but I think we've now opened that door up. We're about to get into the world of whomever is doing this to these girls. Dexter's about to find out, and all hell is going to break loose. Or, and this is where this gets really dicey, if it is Edward and Audrey gets taken, Harrison's going to handle this. And I don't think he's going to do it as cleanly as Dexter would. They might both try to kind of converge in on that person, see that they're both doing it, and Dexter's going to be like, that's not how you do it. And Harrison's like, I'm in probably more practice of doing this than you are, old man. Let me handle it. And it could be a passing of the torch. That's just what I'm thinking, but what did you guys think about this episode, Smoke Signals? So leave your thoughts and comments in the comments below. If you haven't already, you can follow us on Twitter at HollywoodADI. You can hit us up on email at HollywoodAlreadyDidIt@gmail.com. We also have a podcast by the same name. That's on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere that plays podcasts. We're there. And like always, I got my ticket. You got yours.